One moment. And go. Hi, welcome to Woodcraft Spokane on a smoky Saturday. Hope you're all staying in and staying healthy here. Joel and I have been tasked today with doing a quick router table demo. We're not going to be able to cover everything on the router table in a 10 to 15 minute demo, but it's just enough to hopefully answer maybe some basic questions and enough to get you into the store so that we can give you a more detailed walk around on a router table. Let's talk about the anatomy of a router table first, Joel. They're going to come in a couple different formats. This router table, Joel and I had the great pleasure of putting together yesterday for the class. It's your standard Craig router table. Over here, we have the benchtop router table. So the difference obviously is this is a fully set up with legs. This is set up to be used on the bench of your home. Today we're going to focus on the stand-up model. The bench tops are available. We have a couple different brands that we can show you out on the floor right now. So in the Craig router table, in putting it together yesterday, I found some features that I really liked on it. We're not here to just talk about the Craig. We also offer the Jessam. The Jessam is what I have in my shop. There's a couple differences. The nice thing about the Jessam is the fence system is different, and it allows me to run what's called a miter slider. So instead of having my miter gauge through my T-track on the front of my tabletop, my miter gauge actually pivots over the top, is suspended off of my fence, and that way when I'm doing my rails and stiles, it's a lot better system. So if someone comes in and they said, hey, I'm just looking for that home router table, I have no problems at all putting them onto this Craig. The quality of it is good. Craig's come a long ways. So here's our first disclaimer of the day, Joel. This is a bit guard. This bit guard should be in place at home when you're using this table. It's a safety feature. For today's purpose of demo, we've cleared it with management to remove it so it'll be way easier to see. But again, the only reason we're removing this is for the use of being able to film this demo. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that now. So, Joel, what we've got here, again, talking about the anatomy of this router table, is we have our fence. We have a vacuum port hooked to this. Normally your router table is going to be hooked to dust collection. We're still in the process of putting our classroom together here at Woodcraft Spokane. So I've taken and rigged it to our Festool vacuum for today's demo purpose. Okay, so we've got a miter slot right here so that you can run a miter gauge through this, but our fence is basically going to be the workhorse of the router table. Here you can see that I put a feather board in place, and I'll go ahead and use that when I'm doing demos today. So you say, why a router table? What is this going to do for me that my handheld router won't do, or even that the benchtop won't do? Well, Joel, the idea behind these is so that you can take and put a cabinet side on it and run it. This is the same setup that when I'm building cabinets in my shop that I'm using in my tongue and groove cabinet work. We have, again, a Jessam setup in my cabinet shop. It's a production shop, and I love it. I've had no problems with it at all, but again, would not hesitate putting the Craig system in. So let's talk about a couple of the things that come with a router table. So I'm going to move this fence back so we can get at the meat and potatoes of this thing. And of course, that would be the router. So we're getting ready to do a bit change. So what do we do on our bit changes, Joel? We separate it from power, correct?
Absolutely.
We're not working on this thing without this thing being unplugged.
Safety first.
So now I know I have no power to it. It accidentally can't be turned on. This little red ring right here, Joel.
Coming around.
it's going to take and turn on and off with this tool that Craig provides. This ring's going to come in various configurations. Can you hand me those two over there, Joel, so we can show them what we're talking about? No, the red rings, sir. Okay, so the red rings here, you can see we've got different diameters. What we're trying to do is we're going to try to line this ring up, the hole, to fit as tight as we can against the bit without causing any interference. That handle back there, Joel? Yes. Now, I should back up the bus a little bit on this. This router table, because it's the one that's going to stay in the classroom, we were gifted a router lift. Not all router tables are going to have a lift in them. Advantage of the lift, if nothing else, Joel, is it'll allow us to do above the table bit changes without having to remove this whole insert to change a router bit in that. So here's how it works. The motor itself in this router is a 3 1/4 horse Porter cable. Sits suspended in kind of a clamshell, Joel. It goes in, we take and tighten it up, and then we're using this little handle right here to raise and lower it.
Oh, look at that.
Another feature on this, Joel, that's important is once I get whatever I'm routering set to height, I can lock that out. You're thinking, well, why is that important? That's important because over time, this motor at 3 1/4 horse is going to spin up pretty good, and it's going to take and have a tendency to maybe start wandering up and down. This way here, I'm locking that bit into the same position so it's not going to move height-wise. Okay? So I'm bringing this up to here. Now, with the router comes the 2 wrenches. So Joel, like one that we offer here at Woodcraft. And it's an offset, and you can see the offset right here, Joel. So you're saying, why is that important? Well, let's say that I've set this router to height, and I'm using a rail and style bit. And in my rail and style bit, I need to change from my rails to my styles. I don't want to have to take and adjust the height and then try to figure out where I was again. So let's say that I was down in the machine and that was at my height. Well, this wrench right here, Joel, will allow me to get on the lower nut of that arbor and I can do my bit change. And it's as simple as that. I'm just taking in, doing that, and out with the bit it comes. Now, this arbor right here, the way this collet works is as it tightens, it sucks the bit down. Will you hand me that bit set right there? These bit sets in the tongue and groove are a match set. So once I have them set to height, I can change back and forth between these without ever having to make an adjustment on the router. You say, how does that happen? Joel, you're looking at me like, how can you do that?
How can you do that?
Well, I've already said that the collet on the router, as it tightens, sucks the bit down. So how do we know we're getting it in the same position every time?
Do tell.
I've got an answer, Joel.
Well, hold on.
We are going to take a little rubber grommet.
No.
And we are going to put it right in the hole on the end of the router. So that way, when I drop this bit in here, Joel, I'm dropping it in the same position every time. When I tighten the collet, it's going to tighten it down against the same position every time. That is what allows me to do those bit changes in a match set without having to do adjustment. So, as I take and come into this, Joel, we're going to go ahead and put this bit in. It's a 1/2 inch shank, I believe 1/4 or 3/8 round over. I'm going to come here. I'm going to tighten it down. I don't have to take and Hulkamama this down, Joel. I just got to make sure that it's tight.
Is that a trademark word?
Yes, that's something that we use in corner lot woodworks.
Hulkamama?
Hulkamama, yes.
Fantastic.
So then, Joel, I now have my bit back in. It's secured. I'm going to take my red ring right here that comes with my table, and I'm going to take and drop it in the slot. Joel, I'm going to drop this in the slot after I bring this down just a touch because my cullet's not allowing it to seat. I'm going to take my tool, which lines up into those little pins. I'm going to follow the directions and turn that clockwise, and it locks that in. Now, I'm still unplugged, Joel. I can take that and make sure that my bit is not going to interfere with that red ring. And right now, Joel, I have good clearance on my cutting edge of that in my red ring. Okay?
Excellent.
So, let's start clearing some of this stuff off that we don't need. I'm going to hand you those. I'm going to hand you those. I'm going to hand you that. And I'm going to hand you that. So now, Joel, we need to set our fence to the bit. So will you hand me that metal ruler? A couple things we got to consider here too. As we're sliding this fence forward, these fence pieces right here, we obviously don't want our router bit coming in and getting cut by those as the router turns up. So we're going to make sure that we're clearing enough gap, and what I usually do is line them up to that outside edge of the hole in my red ring. Now I know that my router will spin freely in here without interference. Okay? So then, Joel, because this is a bearing bit, I've got your standard steel rule that's available at Woodcraft right now, and I'm going to come over here, put it up against my fence, right?
Right.
And Joel, I'm going to take and lock my fence down, and I don't know if you can see this, but what I've got going on, Joel, is I've got this just so it's engaging the bearing. The edge of the rule is against my back fence.
Okay, let me get a tight view on that for our viewers.
Can I move that? Would that help?
That is perfect right there.
So right now I've engaged my bearing against my fence. And that way I know that I'm getting the full depth of profile of that bit.
Perfect.
So then, Joel, what's left to do?
Plug it back in?
Yeah, but not quite yet. We're going to start, Joel, by let's figure out bringing our bit up roughly into where we think it's going to make contact. So what I like to do is come over here and go, that is going to take way too much off, Joel. We're going to sneak up on this cut, okay? The idea on this roundover is the top of the point should be running flush with my face, in this case, my face frame material. All right, Joel, that's a great spot to start. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and turn this out of the way. Again, I'm unplugged, Joel, and I'm going to take and put my feather board right there. Joel, you sabotaged me. There we go. Now I can adjust my feather board. And we're going to take and go like that. We're going to take and go like that. That feather board's got a job to do, Joel. It is to keep that product tight against the fence. The other job it has, Joel, is to keep my fingers away from that spinning bit.
Safety first.
Safety first. And again, I want to throw the disclaimer out there because I was promised John, the manager, that normally there would be a guard in place right here. But again, for the use of our video here, I'm going to go ahead and live on the edge and run this without the guard, Joel.
You remember with Eddie the Stump, he lived on the edge.
All right, Joel. Will you give me some vacuum?
I will, and then I'm going to go ahead and move the camera to the other side.
Okay. And do we have any questions so far, Joel? Gosh, we're throwing a lot of information at them. Do we even have viewers today, Joel? Good. How's your view from there? All right. We're ready to go. Our vacuum's on. Our fence is set and locked down. Our bit is in a position we can start. Our feather board's where we need. I actually brought in a push stick today. Not just any push stick, Joel, but we have a Moby stick right here. Okay? I've now turned it on. So Joel, you can see right there the profile I was able to put on that piece of wood. Now mind you, there's a little edge there, and I don't know if the camera with our delicate equipment is picking this up, but I'm probably sitting a little bit tall on that bit. But that's got a little lip that I could sand that off, but if I'm going to run another one, drop that just a little bit, Joel. So that's your basic roundover router table setup. So, Joel, at this point, do you think it would help to do a bit change and do another profile on a different piece of wood?
Well, I think so.
All right, let's do it. So, what do we have to do first, Joel?
We have to unplug the machine.
Unplug the router, if you would. Safety first. Now, we can make all the adjustments we want, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, Joel. So, let's see what we have over here as far as bits go. Oh, Joel, I brought this in. I think we demoed this a couple demos ago on doors. But this isn't something that you're going to make with your handheld router. This is something that actually came out of the Woodcraft set right here. So it has a rail and style profile in it. Am I too tall?
No, you're perfect.
And it also has this flat panel cutter in it too. So that's where the router table comes in, Joel. You're not going to do that with a handheld router. You're going to do that on a router table. And preferably, because some of the styles, on that set of doors that we built on that cabinet, Joel, I think those things were 30 plus inches tall. It's way easier to do it on something stable like this over even the bench top. And again, we're dealing with a 3 1/4 horse motor here. In that bench top, you'd want at least 2 2.5 horse, something like that, or the 3 1/4. You're not going to put a trim router in either one of these setups, Joel. They're not designed to do that. All right, so
Let's change a bit.
let's change a bit. Well, Joel, what I brought in is one of my favorite Woodcraft bits, and that's the multi-molding bit. I can make all kinds of different profiles with that bit. Are you getting a clear look on it, or would this help?
That's perfect.
Okay?
All right.
So it's another bearing bit. All right? So what we're going to do, Joel, not to be repetitive here, we're going to come over and we're going to take and put this right in here. Now we're going to turn that so that our red ring comes out, correct?
Absolutely.
So, again, let's say I do not want to move the height of this, Joel, to change my bit. I'm going to come in with my angled wrench. I'm going to come right over here, and I'm going to loosen up the collet on this on this router, Joel. I'm able to then pull my old bit out. I'm able to seat my new bit in. Again, I'm not going to Hulk-a-mama this down. We're just going to make it tight. Any sign of our friend April today?
Yes, she is there.
Well, good. So April knows about the router table. She would be using this to cut the drip edges on her charcuterie boards. That's what she likes to make. She's educated Joel and I on that. So she would be able to do her routering on a table. So Joel, what we got to do is, will this red ring? No, it won't. So we're going to have to go to the big ring here, Joel. There we go. So the first thing that we got to do, Joel, I know you're remembering this. If I have to take with that in this position and run that router, I'm going to start eating up these fence inserts. So we're going to open it up a little bit wide. And on the Craig, all you need is loosen the two adjustments on the back. The Jessam actually has a little tool with Allen heads on it. You loosen them up. All right, Joel. Now my bit can spin freely in our table. There it is. So the next thing that we're going to do, Joel, is the steel ruler. And on that steel ruler, again, Joel, we're taking and anchoring our fence down. And then we're bringing this so it's just making contact with the bearing. And we're anchoring it down. So now, Joel, we're going to do a quick height adjustment. Oh, that'll be a beautiful profile. All right.
Is that the money shot?
That is the money shot, Joel. So we're going to come over here. I think we'll use our feather board again, Joel. Is there anything that we've forgotten?
Well, we haven't plugged it back in yet.
Perfect.
We check safety.
We check safety.
And we have the disclaimer.
We have the disclaimer.
So I would say...
I'm going to turn on the vacuum.
And then...
If you'll add some power to what we're doing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm going to go ahead and energize our router by flipping our switch up here. Every time I look at this profile, Joel, this bit will cut multiple different profiles. And we have it over in our cabinet right now, and if we're out of them because they're a hot seller, we can get them. So this is kind of a master molding bit. I use it a lot, Joel. Are you getting a good view on the profile?
I did get a good view.
And how about the end view there?
Perfect.
Okay? So that's the router table. We've gone through a couple different bit changes. We've gone through some safety stuff. We've talked a little bit about the anatomy. We've talked about a router table with a lift and a non-lift. In the non-lift mode, you're going to go ahead and bolt your router. You're going to take off your base and you're going to actually bolt your router to this plate right here. Again, the disadvantage is not being able to do above the table bit changes. You saw how quick that bit change was, Joel. It took, less than a minute to change that bit out. It doesn't matter if it's a 1/4 inch collet or a 1/2 inch collet, it works the same way. You can, again, on the other router table, on the Jessam, we can accessorize that with what's called the miter slider. It is a flop over that, again, gives us a miter. Otherwise, we can run a miter in the T-track here. We can do double feather boards, Joel, where we have this one here and one from the top, so we're pushing down on whatever we're running as well as pushing in. And then, Joel, one of the things that when we start to do, I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. When we start to do pattern work, and we're using I've started making electric guitars. We're blessed with a luthier here, and it's something I've always wanted to do. And we have to do a lot of pattern work with those. So we take and double side tape our template to the guitar body, and then we take and either router an edge on it or use a flesh trim bit or a pattern bit. This here, Joel, is an accessory that comes with the tabletop that allows us a starting pin if we were going to just do some freehand routering and weren't using the fence. We're not set up today to do template work, but the idea behind that is, as I'm introducing the piece into my turning blade, this gives me something to anchor against as I'm bringing it into the blade. So this piece screws on and off the plate. So Joel, do you have any questions? You're usually good. I know you're under the weather today, but...
Yeah, so we've talked about router tables. We've even talked about the small benchtop router table.
Yes.
Can you also talk about, for our viewers, the router boxes?
What do you mean by router box?
Well, we sell the Wood River that has the double doors on the floor.
Yes.
And I believe there's, I own a bench dog.
Yeah, okay. So what Joel's talking about is kind of the cabinet version of a bench top. The old bench dog router, I had one. They're an absolute beast as far as durability in that. The Wood River one that we have out here right now, it's a fully enclosed cabinet, which gives you storage underneath. It gives you vacuum ports that you're able to take if you wanted to make modifications. So you had dust collection here and here. The idea behind them is they are a cabinet basically set up to go on top of your bench. Is that what you were looking for? Yeah. So I guess if we go handheld router, then we go to benchtop router table, then we go to standalone router table. The other end of the spectrum on that, Joel, would be shaper. And the primary difference on this versus a shaper, this has a router motor that's got a cullet that's designed to take router bits, whereas shaper, most of them are a belt-driven spindle where the bit itself has a hole in it. You have bearings, you're putting it down on that. Most of your shapers in your professional shops will have a power feed to them because you're feeding probably larger diameter. In my shop, I just got rid of my shaper because I wasn't using it enough to justify the space for it. But for making moldings and that, it was the way to absolutely go.
In case you didn't already touch on this, can you put any kind of router in that table?
So in the Craig one here, in looking through the directions yesterday, they listed about 15 different routers that would go right into this with just an adjustment of the little clams down below. And by what I mean by little clams, they look like little clam shells. You just have to refigure these little awls. Then they gave you the ability and said, if we're not listing your router here, measure the diameter on it, and they gave you some ability with that to still get your router in there. This router here, it's the 3 1/4 horse Porter cable. It's designed because it does not, in this application, it came in a box. It does not have a base. We have it available out there in a base. It's what I used, or what I use in my cabinet shop. I've had really, really good results with it. Plenty of power, variable speed. So, what else, Joel?
Yeah, if a viewer wanted to go onto woodcraft.com right now and look up this particular table that we worked on today, can you give them a number?
Absolutely, Joel. So this is available in basic kit form. 160628 is what they call their complete router table. And then, Joel, the difference is the base that we're, or the lift that we're putting in. In this particular case, I believe the lift we put in this was a 163900.
So 163900, type that in the search bar on woodcraft.com.
Yeah, and that'll talk about it. And then on the Jessam, it also has a fully available deluxe router table with a master lift 2 in it also, Joel. And that number is 153217.
153217.
And I know right now that we have a Craig out on the floor set up. We do not have a Jessam. They are inbound. And I also know that we have this benchtop Craig available, and we have the Wood River, I believe, out there available also.
All right. Is there any parting advice you want to leave our viewers? Some layman advice, those that are just getting into it, what do they need to look for?
The thing that, and we're kind of in the COVID unknown as far as the classroom right now, Joel, but I advise people all the time to take that Router 101 class, which is going to be way more in depth on this. It's going to allow people to do a hands-on, because before you're purchasing, $1,000 to $1,400 worth of tools, in the class you're going to be able to use these tools and maybe more define what your application is going to be at home. Now that this is set up and in the classroom, we do have the ability in a one-on-one, if you came in and said, hey, I saw you do that demo on Saturday, I have a question. I can actually walk you back here now, and we'd have access to this table and hopefully answer your question. So that would be my advice is on any of these tools. I believe the 101 classes that we offer are just as important for someone that hasn't made that purchase yet as they are for someone that's got it, it's new out of the box, and they're trying to get familiar with the usage of the tool they bought.
All right. Fantastic.
Do we have any questions out there, Joel?
We have no questions as of right now.
All right. Well, let's give it another 60 seconds, see if anybody's got a question.
Well, I'll just add this until somebody gives us a question, and that is, thank you so much for viewing us on Facebook Live. We are really enjoying bringing these videos to you into your home and onto your computer, iPad, or tablet, or whatever you may be viewing this with. If there's anything that you would like us to do, let us know, and we will get on that. Also, please go on and visit our Woodcraft of Spokane YouTube page. Right there we have plenty of videos. These videos get cleaned up and put on there, and every subscription that you do, every like that you do, every comment you do really does help us produce more of these videos, and we are so much enjoying it. So first of all, thank you, and no further questions.
All right, and I'm kind of touche with what Joel said. He doesn't get enough credit because he's behind the camera all the time, but we are open for suggestion. If there's something that you'd like to see that we can reasonably produce in a demo, with the 6 or 7 of us that work here and everybody's got different skill sets, we'd love that. We'd love to keep it fresh. We'd like to target some things that maybe you have questions on till we can get back in the classroom. So we try to be as user-friendly as we can.
And if you'd like to see me turn something, I'm a turner, and I will be in front of the camera. So let us know if there's a demo that you'd like to see Joel turn something.
Joel, Could we maybe do a duck call demo?
We might be able to. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough call for it, except from you.
Well, it's something that I sure would like to see, and we've had some people come in the store asking for it, so maybe we can get management to greenlight a duck call demo.
Well, we'll see.
All right. Well, that's what we have for this Saturday. Again, stay healthy out there. Thanks for tuning in. Come see us at Woodcraft Spokane.